Well, I was in the mood to make another Trash to Treasure project, and I decided to make this half barrel that we can use in the landscaping around the dollhouse. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. All right, to start out, we're going to work on the base and do our pre-painting of our pieces. So I started out with one of these cat food containers. This specifically had Meow Mix cat food in it, you know, the little single serving things. And I very carefully off camera cut this rim off. And it actually cut off pretty easily. I used a heavy duty pair of shears, like big heavy scissors, and it worked really well. I just didn't want to do it on camera because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. But that's how this looks at this point. Now we're going to paint the inside of this, and then we're going to build our barrel, put our barrel staves on the outside after we paint and cut them. So I'm going to start, I've got some just isopropyl alcohol in this little spray bottle. I want to make sure that any oils from my fingers or from anything that's been in here is cleaned out, and this is completely bare. Now this is a container I have been using around my craft table, so it's not been holding cat food recently. It's one that's just been sitting here, so it could have anything on it. I could have mixed paint in it, I could have done any number of things, so I'm going to make sure it's really clean. Then the inside of our barrel is just going to be black. My black paint is almost empty. I'm just going to squirt some in there. I'm going to use a big brush, and I'm going to paint the entire inside of this black. That will give a good interior color to our barrel when we're done. When these are finished, we could do any number of things with them. I've got a couple of ideas. I'm not sure which I'm going to do. I'm kind of torn. So I may end up doing another one off camera and doing then another video later showing you, or a couple of videos showing you some different things that these can become. So I'm going to finish painting the inside of this, and then I'm going to set up to prep our faux wood that we're going to use on the outside. So I'll be right back. All right, now here I have just a thin piece of cardboard. This happened to be some packing material inside of a case of cat food. Yeah, the cat is contributing to this project quite a bit. He'll probably also walk across it and leave footprints later off camera. And I'm going to paint this with a coat of brown acrylic paint first. I want to get this colored in. This is my really thick brown because I couldn't find my other brown. Oh, that looks gross coming out of that tube. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint probably about half of this card with a nice dark brown acrylic paint. And this happens to be a burnt umber, which is a good color for a base for our wood. And when this is dry, I'm going to come back and add some kind of faux wood grain. I've got a couple of things I want to try for that. And then when that's dry, we'll cut and start assembling our barrel. So let me get this finished to be painted. I'm only going to go about this far. I don't need more than half of this, I'm sure. So when this paint dries, I'll be back and we can add some wood grain to this, and then we'll get to move on. See you then. All right, this paint is dried, and I've got 2 little tiny drops of paint. I have a drop of Anita's in pumpkin, and Anita's in, what is this? This is buttered yam. I'm going to attempt to do something that will kind of translate as a wood grain. This is a very stiff brush, and if this doesn't work, then I'm going to cut into my brush a little bit. But I'm wiping it off on paper towel, and then I'm just going to lightly dry brush lengthwise the way that I'm going to plan to have my wood grain run. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. And I can always go over this with a light coat of the brown again if I need to, if I feel like I overdid. But because I have a lot more cardboard here that I'm going to need for this, so it still has wet paint in it, I won't need the whole piece. Let's see. I'm going to get another dry brush. I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to kind of brush that out a bit. All right. So I'm just going to add a little more of the colors until I get something that will kind of be reminiscent of a wood grain. And then when this is dry, we'll come back, we'll do a little dry brushing of brown over it, and then we can start assembly. I'll see you then. All right, I've got just a little bit of the same brown I've got on the back. I've washed my brush. It's still a little damp, which I think be good because I want to kind of disguise the spots I went too heavy for. And now I'm going to let this dry completely. And when this is dry and the paint on the inside of this is dry, because that's still very wet, then we can start assembly. So I'll see you then. All right, the paint on the inside of this is finally dry. That took all day. Now we need to attach our faux wood staves. So I cut that sheet of paper down into 1/4 inch strips. Then I cut those strips into 1.5 inch long pieces because 1.5 inches long will fit on the side of my barrel or my half barrel. Now, we are working with plastic, and so obviously tacky glue is not going to be a great hold. I'm going to be using tacky glue along with super glue. And you guys know I really hate super glue, but we're going to work with it. So what my plan is, and I'm not going to make you watch me do all of these because this is going to take a while. I'm going to spread glue on a few of these pieces. And since I cut that all up in strips and then just dumped them in a container as I was cutting them, they're all mixed up. So that will give even more of the look of pieces of wood because they aren't going to match up. Chances are I'm not going to be putting pieces next to each other that were cut next to each other on the cardboard. In other words, if that makes sense. Okay, now get some glue on there. I want a little more on that one, I think. This tacky glue is quite sticky, so it might hold somewhat. So now, brand new tube of super glue. And I'm going to make sure I'm under camera. And I'm going to do my best to keep these going straight, fairly straight. And just a few dots, especially a dot at the top and a dot at the bottom. And this is not going to be all that's going to hold these on. We are going to be adding some bands around this. So that will be what really holds this on. So I think 3 dots of super glue as I work my way around the barrel. So I am going to turn the camera off and probably put on something to listen to or something to watch. And I'm going to get these all glued on. When I get them all on, I will come, and the glue is dried enough that we can go on, I will come back and we will add on some bands. In order to prep for the bands, I will be painting some medium weight cardstock with some black paint. I think that will probably be my best bet. So I will paint that off camera and that way it can be drying while I am working on this. So I'll see you when I get this done. All right, my barrel is completely covered with our faux wood. Now you will have to angle them and overlap a little bit at the bottom. And I found every once in a while I had to overlap more. Just try and keep a straight up and down on your boards. And then the next to the last one, I cut narrower, and then I filled in with one that was a full size. And you won't really notice those little details once it's done. Any flaws will kind of disappear. As long as your top and your bottom are relatively flat, relatively straight, you're fine. You don't need to do a lot of, extensive trimming. And as I said earlier, I painted a piece of just plain white cardstock with black paint. Now, these are going to have to be a lot longer than you would think. Circumference is pretty big. So it always shocks me how long of a piece I need to go around something. And this is cut 1/8 of an inch. I'll need 3. I've cut 4 just in case I mess one up. Because it's been one of those weeks. We all have them. Now I've got tacky glue. And we're gluing this directly to our faux wood, which is painted cardboard. So we won't need any special glue. This will stay on pretty easily. And I cut this so that it overlapped, I would guess probably almost an inch, 3/4, at least a half an inch. I didn't really measure. I just kind of whacked it off where I knew it was overlapping. I'd rather have it overlap a little more so that it just stays in place. Get that whole back covered with a thin layer of tacky glue. And now, and also I did find, because we were using super glue, I got super glue on my fingers, and that did pull up some of the paint on the inside. So I did a little touch up on the paint. One spot I pulled a whole chunk up because I didn't realize there was a big gob of super glue on my finger. So watch that, but it's easy enough to touch up the paint. And let's see how far we got. I got this. This is overlapping probably about a half inch, I would bet. All right, so that's our first strip. Now we're going to cut our second one to length. And I'm going to let the glue on these two. Oh, the paint on the inside is still, there's black paint somewhere still, but oh, I know, this fell into a gob of paint over there. So I'm just going to kind of wrap this around, even with the bottom, and I'm going to overlap it about there. Yeah, there's a big gob of black paint right there. Okay, let's get a paper towel. Of course I make a mess. Like I said, it's been one of those weeks. Yeah, there's a big, you can't see it on camera, but it's off camera, but there's a big pool of black paint that I didn't see. Ah, yes, it's one of those. If it's going to spill, I'm going to spill it. You know that. If you've watched me, you know that. Especially when I get right into a project and get really involved, I totally, a lot of times, miss that I've spilled paint or something. All right, the whole strip is covered in paint, in glue. Now, and I'm not worried about lining those up because those are not going to show that much where the overlap is. Just line it up with the bottom. And it's not going to fit perfectly because it's angled in a little bit at the bottom. And this one I overlapped a lot more, but that's okay. Now I am going to let this glue dry. Then I'm going to come back and we're going to put a, actually I'm not going to put a band. I was going to put a third one in the middle. I'm not going to. I like this. You'll have to decide on yours. I think with a third one, yeah, I think that would be too much. I'm just going to let the glue dry on this, and I'm going to call it good. So I only need 2 of the 4 strips I cut. You might need 3, you might need 2. It's up to you. Decide when you get yours put together how you like it. So I'm going to let this glue dry, and when this is dry, I'll come back and we'll take a look at our finished half barrel. And the glue is pretty much dry. I've still got a little bit of damp glue on here, but that's good enough that we can take a look at it. And I've got a little wet paint inside. But I love how this turned out, and I've got a couple of different ideas of how I want to use this. So I may have to make another one off camera so I can try a few different projects out with these. But I love how this turned out. I love the wood grain that I got on the cardboard. It really turned out looking like wood. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. So be sure and check the blog post for photos and more information. If you enjoyed today's project, be sure and hit the like button and leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to see in future videos? If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, I encourage you, hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.